General Stephen Olmstead, thank you very much for your valuable time. I would like to ask you where you born, when you born, and what school you went through, please.
I was born on the 10th of November, 1929, in Albany, New York. My early schooling was in the Albany public school system. I then went to Champlain College in Plattsburgh, New York, for a year. And then in August of 1948, I joined the United States Marine Corps. I joined on a program of 1 year enlistment active duty and 8 years reserve duty. After my 1 year, I went back to...
Could you make a choice of it? For like a 2-year active service and 4-year reserve. Could you make that?
Yes, those were other options available at that time. I don't know what the success of the 1-year program was. There wasn't very many people in it. The 1-year active duty program at that time.
That's very interesting to Koreans that we're not going to have such choice. You got to do what year for service, and then you got to do 7 years reserve, and that's it. Not individual choice. Why do you think there is availability?
Well, it was just after the war, and there wasn't that big demand for recruits in 1947 and 48, and so they had a number of options. You could have enlisted for 4 years, I suppose, and then had a much smaller reserve commitment.
I see. That's very interesting. Could you tell me about your family, your father and mother and brothers and sisters?
It's fair to say that we came from a typical middle-class family. My father was a veteran of World War I.
Oh.
He was a chief petty officer in the Navy, and he served on the USS Oklahoma. My mother was, in addition to being a mother and a housewife, was a social worker for the state of New York. And so she stayed very busy. Unfortunately, my father passed away in 1945, so she was a single parent for quite a while.
Wow. You're from Albany. Tell me about the upstate. I'm from Syracuse.
I love upstate New York.
Be honest.
Other than the long winter, yeah. I remind people that we used to be a very big dairy-producing state.
Yeah.
And the lakes, the mountains, the Adirondack Mountains, it's
beautiful.
Very dear to my heart.
Yes, yes. So what were you doing when the Korean War broke out in 1950, June 25th?
On June 25th, I had just finished my second year at Champlain College. I had gone home to Albany, and I was out on a date with a double date with a good friend of mine, Congressman Solomon. Later on, he became a U.S. congressman. And I said, there's a war going on someplace called Korea, and I get a feeling that I'm going to get called up, so I better go down and check in. And he said, I'll go with you. And I said, no, you can't. You got to go to boot camp first. He did. He went to boot camp, but he never got to Korea.
What do you mean? You didn't go to boot camp?
Oh, I went to boot camp back in '48. I told Jerry he had to go to boot camp. 1 year active duty.
Active duty of what?
Of the United States Marines.
Oh.
I went through Parris Island in August and September of 1948.
Oh. Was that after the the high school?
Yeah, it was one year college. And then I went down to Paris, joined the Marines. Went to Parris Island. After Parris Island, they sent me out to Camp Pendleton for infantry training. And from there, I went to guard duty up in the state of Washington. And then my 1 year was up.
When did you graduate high school?
1947.
And then you went to Plattsburgh.
Plattsburgh for 1 year.
1 year. And then you joined.
Active duty for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Plattsburgh for the second year. And by that time, it's June of 1950.
Uh-huh. Wow. So why did you enlist? You enlist, right?
Yes.
Why did you do that? You were in the college. You were at the college,
Yeah.
and what did you study, and why did you enlist?
Well, I think mostly in college I was taking a general studies course because I was up there. I played basketball on the college team, and why did I enlist in the Marines?
Mm-hmm.
I just had a feeling that I wanted to do something different and see the world, and I was working doing this on a summer job in the streets, under the streets of Albany, a repair job. One rainy day, we couldn't work, so I went into the post office, and some great big tall Marine says, "I'm going to make a leader out of you." So I signed on.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, boy. What did you study in Plattsburgh?
Oh, I mostly psychology courses.
So please tell me about your boot camp experience. What did you do? How was it?
I liked it. I liked the discipline, and I felt to myself, I can be just as tough as the next guy, and I liked it.
What was your specialty?
Well, in boot camp, you're a recruit. You're nothing.
Yeah, but after you become an active.
I became an 0300 infantry.
So when you first heard about the Korean War broke out, what did it tell you? Were you afraid? Were you afraid that you're going to be there and being killed?
No, I didn't have that concern at all, and I'll tell you later why it was justified. At that time, when the war broke out, there was a reserve unit in Albany, New York, and I went over to see the captain, and I don't even remember who he was, and I told him that I have an obligation. I felt that I would probably be called up sometime later. I'd like to go now with you, because that reserve unit had been already called up.
Wow.
And he said, "How long have you been out?" And I said, "About 10 months. He says, "You're ready to go." So the reserve unit, within about a week, went down, got on the train in Albany, and went to Camp Pendleton, California. At Camp Pendleton, they separated us by people with prior Marine Corps active duty service and people who had no active duty service and had to go to boot camp and things like that. And I was in the first group, so we had about 3 weeks of infantry refresher training. And then we got on the ship, got out of San Diego, and sailed to Japan.
When did you leave for Japan?
I'm not sure.
Month?
It would probably be the end of September
1950.
1950, yes.
Did you know anything about Korea?
No, not really. I did know where it was, but I mean, I
You
knew nothing.
didn't know.
But I didn't know anything about the traditions. I didn't know. I guess I should have known about the Japanese occupation and things like that, but at that time I didn't.
What people talk about the Korean War at the time when there was just first heard to everybody? Do you remember any?
I think the main thing and is in the press and things like that is we have to stop communism. And we just can't let... That was at the period when communism was trying to extend all over the world. And the public statements and the public opinion that I recall is we got to stop communism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what did you do in Japan for how long?
we weren't there. We were there maybe 10 days at the most. Make sure we had the right equipment that we deserved, some physical training. We were only there a very brief time.
Mm-hmm. How was on the ship to the Japan?
How was it?
Yeah.
Well, we were on a troop ship, and we had bunks that were 6 high. It seemed to me that one of the guys above you was always seasick, too. Mm-hmm. Very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. But, you know, you put up with it. He's doing it, I can do it.
Yeah. So tell me about when you left Japan to where in Korea, and when was it?
It would have been the last week of October, or maybe even the first couple days of November, 1950. We landed in Wonsan, and we were assigned to the 1st Marine Regiment, most of us were, which was Colonel Puller. Chesty Puller was the regimental commander. We were there until probably, it's after the 10th of November, maybe the 12th or 13th, and everybody started moving north. And we got the word from our company commander, Captain Sitter, that we were going to be going up to Ham Hung. And there was a train that had flat cars. It wasn't the kind that you sit in chairs or anything. It was just flat cars.
Yeah.
And we piled on that. And I noticed that we had a lot of 55-gallon drums of fuel on the flat cars, too. And I was thinking, boy, if somebody starts shooting into us, it'll be a mess. Somebody did crank off a couple of rounds at us. And we jumped off the train, then returned the fire. Nothing happened. Get back on the train. I think the captain kind of hurt his knee when he jumped off the train, because he limped quite a bit after that. Then we got up to Ham Hung, and we got separated from our battalion. Most of the battalion moved on all the way north, and they went up into the Quebec Mountains, where the reservoir was, to the town of Hagaru.
You or they?
No, the rest of the battalion, except our company. Our company stayed at the 10th Corps headquarters to be security for about 3 days. So we were 3 days separated from our parent battalion. Then we got the word there are some trucks available. You guys are going to join up with your parent battalion. So we got aboard the trucks, and there was 1 or 2 rifle fires at us as we went about 30 or 40 miles to where you get up into the mountains. And we got there, and we went, the first town was Coterie, on the other side of, just north of the Funchulong Pass. And we got to Coterie, it was snowing, and we were told...
That's the middle of November.
Oh, that would have been, the 20th or... And we were told to find a place to sleep. And the next...
What do you mean find a place for sleep? Where?
On the ground. Or yeah.
Did you have a sleeping bag?
Yes, we had sleeping bags, but we didn't...
Does that make any difference?
Oh, sure. They saved our lives, the sleeping bags.
But in that tremendous coldness there.
It was very cold. Yeah, it was very cold.
Find a place for sleep, and then?
Well, some guys would sleep under a truck. Some guys would sleep in the truck. And anyway, we were just organized in a group that one night. The next morning, the people up at Hagaru and up around the reservoir desperately needed reinforcements, particularly some more tanks. And so they formed Task Force Drysdale. Task Force Drysdale was commanded by a British Royal Marine Commando, Douglas Drysdale.
Mm-hmm.
And the principal units was his 41 Commando, that's his company, and George Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, and an Army company, and then headquarters units. And we started out very orderly, take the high ground to protect it, but it was taking too long. It was too slow.
Why?
Because of the enemy fire. We just weren't moving fast enough north. And so then the commanding general instructed Colonel Drysdale, I got to have those tanks move out. And the phraseology that I heard is, we're going up high diddle diddle, right up the middle. And so we boarded trucks, and it was kind of like an old Western movie going through what is later called Hellfire Alley. It was about 9 or 10 miles long, because the Chinese were on both sides of the road, and they were just standing there, shooting right into you.
How close was it to the enemies?
Well, many times they were about the end of the table.
Really?
Yes, and they
close?
would be side of the road, and so we would jump out and engage them, drive them away, and go and do it all over again. We did that. It seemed awful. It was for hours. And
What was on your mind when you go through that alley?
what was on my mind?
Yeah.
To do what the corporal told me to do what the squad leader told
Oh
me
my
to do.
goodness.
And I think I personally got a great epiphany at that time. I felt, and I saw it, that if I were hit, killed, or badly wounded, that my fellow Marines, the guys on my right and my left, would get me off the hill and take care of my body. And that meant a lot. And I knew that those guys on my right and my left, they'd take care of me. They had my back. And so that fight up Hellfire Alley lasted 3 or 4 hours. It lasted a long time. It was dark by the time we got there. Our first sergeant was magnificent, Rocco Zulu. Well, we were more scared of Rocco than we were of the Chinese, for one thing. And Rocco told us to do something. Boy, we did it. And but he was right in the thick of it, firing. At first, he was firing a 3.5 rocket launchers. Then he got up on top of a truck, and he was manning it with a 50 caliber machine gun. So just sweeping the sides of the hills so the Chinese would stay off us. And it was dark. Unfortunately, Rocco got hit in the stomach. And,
Do you remember the date?
I can't tell you.
So end of March and end of November.
Yeah, it was the last week in November.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So
So Rocco got hit in the stomach, and Corpsman took him off the truck, and he says, "First sergeant's dead." They took his body, and we kept it on the truck until we got up to Hagaroo. Then they put it over in the morgue. The morgue was just an old tent that they had some bodies in. And a Navy corpsman was checking, called toe tag checking, the dead Marines. And Rocco sneezed. And he said, "He's alive." He sneezed. And so that was a wonderful thing to hear, that the first sergeant was not dead.
how was the Hagaroo situation when you were there?
Hagaroo, of course, was a division center, a division command post. There was a large hill, East Hill, right there that dominated it. And this was at the base of the Changjin Reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
And so that hill had to be secured. And so we went up it, and George Company and some others and some engineers, and we went up and took that hill and kept the hill until we finally evacuated. There was really 3 places, and I say this historically now, that if we had not controlled them, physically controlled them, that the 1st Marine Division in all likelihood would have been annihilated. And I couldn't be talking to you today. And East Hill, Funchulong Pass, down at the south of where the reservoir, the power station, there was a power station, Funchulong Pass. If we didn't have Funchulong, if we didn't have East Hill, and if we didn't have Tokdong Pass to get the people out of UDME, this conversation would not be going on.
Uh-huh.
So we had to control those three places, and we did. And then when the final evacuation order came, of course, we would just peel back to come down. We got the 5th and 7th Marines. They came down from UDMD. The Army, who was beaten bloodily, they were really battered on the east side. They all got together down around Hagaru, and then the group would start moving down from Hagaru to Coterie, through Funchal, and then down to the flats.
Did you hear any Chinese presence at the time that you arrived in Wonsan? Did anybody brief you guys about the Chinese soldiers?
Well, the direct answer is, did Steve Olmstead? No. Remember, I was a private. I was the lowest ranked man there.
But, they have...
But I didn't, I guess we would call it rumors. I had heard no rumors about it. Now I know historically there were plenty, there was evidence.
Yeah.
Prisoners were taken. But me, I didn't. I just went where my corporal told me to go.
What was your mission for Wonsan landing originally?
Replacements. See, we didn't go in it. We were a group of people that had come from Camp Pendleton to Camp Atsu in Japan, and then aboard a ship that came to...
Was it to occupy the northern part of the Korean Peninsula, or just to... You didn't know?
No. In 1950? I didn't know. Again, in retrospect, 19 or 20 years old, I did what my sergeant and my corporal told me to do.
Yeah. So in Hagaru, what did you do?
Most of the time at Hagaru, we were up on the top of East Hill. And the Chinese attacked us a number of nights. We would be in listening posts. And one night that they really got into us up there, they got between two units, two of the platoon units, and they got behind us. They didn't know what to do once they got through us. And there was maybe a dozen or 20 of them. They all got killed. We killed all of them. But the next platoon over from me, about where I was, about 20 or 30 feet away, one of our sergeants was there, and he cornered me and Private Smith, and he says, "Get me some more hand grenades." So we slid off and went back by company to get hand grenades. And he was throwing hand grenades, and he'd go, "Wambatua!" And he'd throw the grenade down into the little area where the Chinese were coming up at us. "Wambatua!" And he did that, and I said, "What are you saying? Sergeant, why are you doing that?" He says, "It's a bad phrase in Chinese, and it makes them awful mad.
Oh.
And I want them mad when I kill them."
Oh.
So, Wambatua. And that was the worst night we had. The rest of the time, we were able to keep them out of being within us by fire. We had very good fire from 81 mortars and the 60 mortars. We owned our own 60s. They were very helpful. And there were some tank units down in the flats that were sending fire up through the valley where the Chinese had to come through to get to us. So after that second night, we were pretty strong up there. And then, of course, when the evacuation started, we were ordered off the hill. And we went down into Hagaru to fall in at the end of the column as it moved out.
Mm. Were there any shortage of logistical items like ammunition or food?
I don't recall being concerned, and again, I'm talking as a private.
Yeah.
I don't recall being concerned about running out of ammunition. If I had my clips of M1 ammunition and some hand grenades, I was in Fat City. I was good. Now, on the big picture, I'm sure they had a lot of logistical problems. But Private Olmstead and Corporal Pendas made sure that I had hand grenades and bullets. Food, we didn't have it, for one thing. You'd get sea rations once in a while.
Yeah.
So
What do you mean once in a while?
oh, maybe every other day or something like that. Somebody hand you a couple of cans of sea rats. But most times you couldn't find any place to heat it.
Right.
If you're up on East Hill, we didn't heat it. I'll tell you that. So we ate crackers and candy. When we got down into where Hagaru was, there would be little bonfires and you could eat the rations down there. It was fun being with the Brits. The British guys were very friendly. And I gave one of them, I had a cocoa bar. And I gave him, he made a cup of cocoa and he and I split and he says, "The Queen doesn't even rate cocoa." That was good. So, yeah, and of course, there's a problem in an extreme cold and combat like that. Hygiene. There's no way that you're going to wash.
Right.
And there's no way that you really want to defecate. You could always urinate, but when you're up on top of a hill, it's pretty tough.
What did you miss most at the time in Hagaru, East Hill? What did you miss most?
Like what?
Like well-done steak or mommy, or what did you miss most?
We were too busy. We were too busy, too concentrated on, is that flare I just saw on that hill over there mean there's some coming at us? I love my mother dearly, but I wasn't worried about mommy when I was up on East Hill. And I wasn't thinking about food a lot either.
What was the state of mind at the time that you were just being fired upon and being surrounded by Chinese? Were you afraid?
Oh, yeah. Concern is probably a better...
Concern.
Yeah, we're very concerned. And the frame of mind is that I didn't want to do anything that would embarrass or hurt my fellow Marines. And I think most guys felt that way. We are a team, and we're going to fight here together. And that was the frame of mind we had. Even when we came out as what was left of us came out as a team.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about sleeping on the snow. One of the strangest commands I ever heard in my life. It was down near Coterie about a week later when we were coming out there. We were up on another mountain there protecting them. And some NCO says, "Okay, men, dig in." What were we going to dig in? It was frozen solid. All right, men, dig in. That meant we just brushed the snow aside and fought from there.
And sleep over there.
Pardon me?
And sleep over there.
Oh, well, yeah. Sleeping was done in snatches, 5 or 10 minutes. And Fewer and I are, and as always, whenever we could, two of us together.
Right.
And so I'd say, okay, you got it now. And you'd nap for about 10, 15 minutes and then punch me in.
So virtually there was no real sleep, but just nap and just constantly woke up and...
I don't recall any lengthy sleep until we got aboard ship down at Hungnam.
I wonder how you guys survived that kind of living condition,
Because I'll tell you how we survived it. One, we were young, 18 or 19 years old. We had excellent leadership. When my corporal or the sergeant or the first sergeant or the captain, they were veterans. With the exception of the corporal, the others had all been through World War II. And they were veterans. And I knew that when they said something, do something, it made sense.
So tell me about, you were in the East Hill and what happened to you, so that why you went down to Godory?
Well, that's when they started the withdrawal. And by that time we had gotten all the units from the east side had come down, and the units from up at Udamni had come down, and they were starting to move south. Everybody had moved.
So you were actually withdrawing from there?
That was the end of the withdrawal. Our last position in Hagaru was on the rough airfield that they constructed there. And we were down on the end of that airstrip down there for the last night we were there. And the Chinese were trying to come down off a hill. And I remember when some of them got caught in a gully in front of us. And when they tried to retreat, they were getting shot at by their own people up on the hill. And they did not get to us. They didn't get within 20 or 30 yards of us. That's as close as they got that night. But I remember that. The Chinese suffered tremendous. I can remember a prisoner, and he didn't have any boots. And it's just a block of ice down at the bottom of his leg.
What do you mean, no boots at all, no shoes,
He
nothing?
didn't. That guy didn't. Well, if he did, it was covered with ice. I looked at his foot, and it was just a big block of ice. And so the Chinese suffered tremendous casualties, and they did. Of the 120 or whatever thousand that was coming after us, they were ineffective after the action.
Did you participate in the building the bridge?
No, I know of it.
Did you see that?
I walked across it, sure, and that's spooky. I mean, you walk across that bridge and you can look down on the side, and it goes straight down where the power pipes were. And, but by the time we got over that, we pretty much had a feeling that we're going to make it. Got on another flat car train. I don't think the North Koreans had any trains other than flat cars.
Yeah. So I see the badge of the Star of Godory in your collar here.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I heard this story from General Kerry. And could you tell me about this, and what were you doing when all the people were praying there? And why did you, and what for? And what happened?
Okay. The main thing, the importance of it is, our success and survival depended a great deal upon the teamwork that we had with our aviation units. And they did a marvelous job when they could, when weather would allow. But when it was actually snowing, in a snowstorm, we couldn't use them. And as we were coming out, there was another snowstorm, heavy snowstorm, and for a fairly extended period, over a day, we had no air to support us. And that night, it just got clear as could be, the clouds disappeared, and this one star showed up. And everybody took it as a symbol.
I mean, was virtually one star, or one star was really shinier?
Yeah, one star was dominant, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
you really saw that?
yeah.
And I heard from General Kerry that they were all praying together.
Well, I'm sure, we...
Was it kind of collective prayer, or?
No, it was individual. We're all, my God, we need to get this, the skies to clear out. And, look, there's a star. It's clearing out. And it did. And we got out.
Did you pray?
I'm sure I did, yeah.
Remember what?
No, I don't remember exactly.
Were there any very dangerous moments that you might lose your life during that Hagaru, East Hill, Border Reef?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, on that first night up on the hill, when the Chinese broke through between the two platoons, I mean, there were literally bodies running over you as close as you and I are right now. And they were shooting, we were shooting. That was pretty close. Later on, after the reservoir campaign, I got shot at a number of times. That could have been life-threatening. But at the reservoir campaign, there was so much incoming and so much stuff going on. You don't sort it out and say, "Oh, that one's coming from me." And, you know.
How many Chinese?
I'm told that there were 120,000 in the reservoir area, and there were 15, 16,000 of us, counting the Army and the Royal Marines.
Did Navy supported you?
Oh, well, the Navy corpsmen are the greatest people in the world. We had chaplains, Navy chaplains and corpsmen with us, and Navy planes.
How about Navy ship, the shot from there?
They couldn't reach the reservoir.
Okay.
That was out of range. But again, the Navy down at Hung Nam, the Navy protected Hung Nam until we got out.
I heard that there was some friendly fires too that actually end up killing significant number of the soldiers.
Well, there's no such thing as friendly fire. If it kills you, it's not very friendly.
Right.
There's accidents all the time, and I'm sure that at the reservoir, I know of no. That's not to say there couldn't have been, but I know of no friendly fire casualties. Later on, yeah.
So what happened from Godori after the skies cleared, weather favorable? What happened?
Well, it was about 4 or 5 miles to the bridge, and people just kept moving in a very orderly way. The 1st Battalion of our regiment secured Funchulong Pass, and they did it in a snowstorm. They took it in a snowstorm, which was good. They secured Funchulong Pass, which protected the bridge and enabled us to get out.
Were there any Korean civilian, North Koreans?
Oh, yes, an awful lot.
Tell me about that.
Well, mostly those that were able to get down to Hung Nam, and there was about 100,000 of them down there. It's my understanding that initially there was no plan to do anything with them. And some people intervened and said, let's put them on the ships. And they did, and they went down to Kojido.
Yeah.
And a little over 100,000 civilians were evacuated. One of the ship's captains that had mostly civilians on it, he proudly says that he took 1,800 North Korean civilians down there and didn't lose a one. He gained 2. 2 babies were born.
Now you retired as Lieutenant General, and now you can talk about, or looking back all those years, and reinterpret what happened, how it happened, and you might have some opinions about this battle at Changjin. Can you give that kind of bird's eye view about what happened to you?
What happened to me?
Yeah, and to happen to all this.
From my perspective,
yes,
I'd be happy to do that. I think, but the strategy of being there, I leave that to history and people like yourself to figure out why we're even there. But from my perspective, and I think I said this a couple of minutes ago, I drew a lot of inner strength from the adversity of the cold, and the snow, and the ice. The ice is terrible. If you're trying to walk, you'd slip and fall and all that. And the adversity of that climate, and the strength that I garnered from the NCOs that I was with. Corporal Pendus was my squad leader. Peep Sight Pendus. He's a legend in the Marine Corps, and he was a great guy, and he knew what he was talking about. And,
What's his name again?
Pendus. Pendas. From Albany, New York.
Oh.
And unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But, and Rocco Zulu, the first sergeant, he is what, if you conjure up in your mind a tough first sergeant in the Boxer Rebellion, or World War I at Belleau Wood, or Iwo Jima, it would be First Sergeant Rocco Zulu. He had that company wired together, and we drew strength from people like him.
So out of that adversity, you got more inner strength and have more power so that you could survive and in other cases, right?
Yes. I really.
What about as a general? What do you think about that operation?
The operation?
Jangdon Battle. Why you were there? Did you have to be there? What do you think about that? What was the U.S. wanted to occupy northern part of the Korean Peninsula, right? That's why you were there.
Remember we got involved because we wanted to stop the spread of communism. And that was a very costly thing to do. We did do that. But then again, I'll leave it to your own historical explorations. Why MacArthur wanted to cross the 38th, and he, it's my understanding, said never get involved in a big land warfare in Asia. Well, he authorized going up north. And there literally was a race to the Yalu to see who would be the first to Yalu. Yeah. And thank God the Republic of Korea Marines were the first ones there. No, why he was doing that? Who gave him that advice? That's generations before me.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about this soft side of your service. Did you write back to your family? Or did you have a girlfriend or friends?
Yeah, well, it took until probably the week before Christmas when we were down in Maison. After we came out of Angnan, we went down to Busan and went up to Maison to regroup. And those people that regrouped were the survivors of the battle, plus the new reinforcements that came in from the States. We were down there into January, 4 or 5 weeks. And at that time, we got mail, and we all wrote mail home. And we got good food.
Did you find some letter for you, too?
Oh, yeah.
Who wrote you?
Oh, my mother and a couple of lady friends, or young girl friends. And,
did you write back to them?
Sure.
How often did you do that?
Once every 2 months. Not very often. I'm not very good at
I have interviewed so many Korean War veterans who wrote every day. Several a week. No?
One of the oddities, like I say, the soft side, one of my best friends, he was a corporal and he was in the weapons company, And I guess I was sharing a letter from home, because he was from Albany too.
Oh.
And I was sharing a letter, and he said, "Can I write to your sister?" I said, "Sure, I don't care." And he did. And they got married.
Oh boy.
When he came home, he got out, and they got married.
Are they alive now?
Just. She's in a nursing home.
Oh. Wow, that's a story.
Well, unfortunately, they separated after a long time. But,
Yeah. But still,
yeah.
were you at the wedding?
Yeah, I think I was the best man. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
And I came home for that. By that time, I had left Korea, of course, and I was stationed in Quantico, Virginia. Oh, that's when they made me a lieutenant.
Do you remember how much were you paid while you were there in Korea? Monthly?
No, $75 seems to ring a bell, but I'm not sure.
What did you do with that money?
I let it ride on the books. I didn't need money.
You didn't need any money, right?
No.
Yeah. So after...
For about a 4 or 5 month period. I didn't need money.
What did you do after regrouped in Busan?
Out of Mason. Then we moved up, and it was called Operation Ripper and Operation Killer, up around Wonju.
Wonju.
Yeah, in the town of Hwangsong. We had a real battle at Hwangsong. So we were up in that area, and on the 1st of April, the new first sergeant says, "Olmstead, report back to battalion. They want to see you in the sergeant major's office." And I got back there, and he says, "We're sending you home."
Why?
To make you a second lieutenant. To make you a second lieutenant.
It was in the middle of battle.
Well.
And the war,
Yeah.
and you've been there only 6 months.
Yeah. So in April 1st, they told me I was coming home.
Was 6 months kind of regular?
I don't think there was a schedule at first. Later on there was, but how many months did you have to put in? There were people that went home quicker than that for other reasons. But there was a small group of us, very small group, that they selected to go to officer candidate school.
I mean, isn't that weird in the middle of war that
No.
they need a soldier, but they got you out of the war and for the officers training?
Well, they needed the officers more.
But that may take how long?
Officer training in those days was about 3 months.
So where did you go?
Quantico, Virginia.
And why were you selected?
I must have fit what they needed, what they were looking for.
What is that?
I don't know. You'll have to ask the senior officers who picked me.
You are too shy. Tell me,
I'm
what part of you made qualified for yourself to become an officer in Marine?
Well, I did sit before a group of officers in Korea, and they asked me some questions, things like that. But I think it's like any promotion; they're looking for potential. They see potential in you, and so that's why we're going to do this. You don't promote people just for something they've done.
Right.
You promote him for what he's going to do for you, for the Corps.
So it was good to be out of there, right?
Yeah. Well, I went back to see Charlie, my friend that later married my sister. I said to the first sergeant, "Can I go over to weapons company and say goodbye to?" He said, "Yeah." And I went over there, and we weren't getting shot at or anything. We were dug out in sides of hill. I said, Charlie, I'm going home. And I thought he was going to cry. He says, why? And I told him, he says, I guess this is it. And he reached in his pack, and he had a can of beer. And he pops the can of beer, and he says, you take the first sip. And he carried that thing for a long time. And so I shared it with him, and said goodbye to my buddies. Came home.
So how long was the officers training?
Well, it was a screening, and they called it a screening process. And I can't be precise on the numbers because I just don't remember them. But out of the division of, in the combat part of the division of 17,000 people, they probably sent about 20 back to Camp Atsu, Japan. At the same time, they were sending them from other Marine units in the Pacific. I remember there's some people came up from the Philippines and things like that. So we had a class of maybe 40 or 50 people in Atsu, Japan. And for about 3 weeks, they cleaned us up. They tried to clean us up, you know.
What do you mean by that?
Make sure we had clean clothes and
make
sure that we were medically fit. And they gave us some lectures on the further screening process. So some people were eliminated in Atsu. Some people, and then got on a plane and flew back to the States with 10 days leave prior to reporting to Quantico. And so I went to New York City, to Grand Central Station, to take the train up to Albany. And some man walked by, and I had my duffel bag, you know. He says, "Hey, soldier." That kind of upset me. But he says, "Hey, soldier."
You were second lieutenant then?
No, I was a corporal. They made me corporal, and I was a corporal. And he says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going home." And he said, "Where you been?" I said, "Korea." And he said, "Where's that? Down south?"
See?
Yeah. So I got on the train, and there were 2 middle-aged ladies sitting behind me in the train. You've probably taken that train up the river. Right along.
Oh, yeah.
I knew they were talking about me. You know, I could tell they were whispering. And one of them reached forward and she tapped me on the shoulder. And she says, "Young man," she said, "Young man, do you know what day tomorrow is?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." She said, "Are you going home on military leave to see your mother?" And I said, yes, I am. She said, "Tomorrow is Mother's Day. Would you please give this to your mother?" And she handed me a box of candy. Now that's one of the nicest things that's ever happened to me. Somebody must have given, somebody gave her a box of candy, and she gave it to me to give to my mother.
Wow.
That's a nice story.
Nice story. I can put that part into my movie.
Well, I'll see if I can find the right person to play my mother in the movie for you.
And your friend Charlie, becoming the brother-in-law, That's another story that I can squeeze into my movie.
Charlie's a cowboy. I mean, at our age, it's hard to be a cowboy, but he is. And I stay in touch with him.
Did you went back to Korea then?
No. I went to a screening course again. There was a longer screening course, and that was from people all over the Marine Corps, so that might have been a couple hundred. Recall, at that time, the reserve had been called up. So we had a lot of master sergeants and tech sergeants and staff sergeants from World War II, and they were all being screened to be lieutenants. And so those of us that come from Korea, we were kids. Really, we were very young kids compared to them. They screened us for about almost all the month of June. It was the month of June. They screened us for the month of June. And on the 28th of June, they took us out to a great big building over here in Quantico. started reading a roster off. And they said, when your name is read, go next door to the following building. Obviously, that wasn't the cutoff. And you'd sit in there and see the people go, and say, "Gee, that's a good guy." And finally, it was about 120 of us were left. And some major came out and says, "Gentlemen, the commanding general." And so we all stood up. The general says, "Congratulations, you've all been selected for second lieutenant."
When was that? June of
28th of June, 1951.
June 28th,
51.
So now you're officer.
Yep.
And then, just briefly, what happened to you? Where did you go, and when did you retire as what?
Oh, well, I was in infantry organizations throughout my whole career. I've had a headquarters company, I had a recon company, I had independent duty in Manchester, New Hampshire, where I was on reserve I&I duty. I was aboard ship, seagoing Marine, I did that. I was honored to command the 9th Marine Regiment on Okinawa. I had 3 tours in Okinawa, so I had a lot of time out there. After that, I was in Italy with the 6th Fleet. I was the Fleet Marine officer for the 6th Fleet. Then when I made general, they sent me to Quantico to run the development center, which was a fascinating job, the future of the Marine Corps. Then I had Camp Pendleton, California. I commanded Camp Pendleton, California. 3rd Marine Division on Okinawa. Came back to headquarters and had the Division of Reserve, commanded the Marine Reserve. My last active duty as a Marine was Parris Island. I commanded Parris Island. And I retired at Parris Island in 1986.
It's in North Carolina?
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
And
how big is it? I've been hearing about this. I need to be there.
You got to go to Parris Island. That's where we make Marines.
I want to be there.
Yep. Parris Island and San Diego Recruit Depot too. Those are the 2 places we make Marines. So when I retired there, I came home, and 19 days later, I got a telephone call from Headquarters Marine Corps that don't put your uniforms away, and they wanted to talk to me about running the Department of Defense Task Force on drug abuse. So I did that, and they brought me back. I did that for 3 more years.
So when did you officially retire?
I think the retirement date is September 1, 1989. It might be August 31st. I'm not sure.
What is Marine to you?
Discipline, organization, comrades, duty. All of those. Yeah. And I've been, as you know, I've been associated with the Marines as active duty for 42 years and 20-some years, 24 years now. Working other than that with the Marines. And I just love to be around them. They're my kind of people.
The place we are doing interview is Museum of Marine Corps. Please tell me about it. What is your role? And I heard about your plant, something big. So please tell those about it.
Located in Quantico, Virginia, is the Museum of the Marine Corps. It's about 8 years old now. It is still in the growth. It'll probably forever be in the growth mode. We have a highly professional and respected museum archivist who you met, Mrs. Zell. And the museum starts out by even having the yellow footprints of Parris Island, where you step on that, the making of Marines, and it goes through the training of Marines. It talks about the various forces in our Marine Air Ground Task Force, and it goes quite a bit of detail of the various battles we're in, to include the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. Chosin, by the way, I recognize as a Japanese word, but the maps that we had were Japanese maps.
You told me there was a gas company there?
I believe I saw gas symbols, commercial gas symbols on one of the maps that we were looking at. And so that's where Chosin comes from, primarily. But you recall, biblically, the chosen few were people that survived.
Chosen few.
Yeah, the chosen few. So the survivors of that battle, and they're principally U.S. Marines. We were the largest organization up there. There were about 15,000 Marines there, about 4,000 U.S. Army, about 300 to 400 Royal Marines, and a couple thousand Korean Marines up there too. So that group there are entitled to wear the little badge that we're talking about, the Star of Coterie. They are the chosen few.
Uh-huh.
Now, the chosen few fought at what is not the chosen reservoir, the Changjin Reservoir. We knew that. Now, about 6 or 7 years ago, when the museum here opened up and their memorial trail, which they have right adjacent to it, it's a lovely spot that goes through the woods, very attractive in the summer. They wanted to know if people were able to sponsor various battles. And almost instantly, there was a commercial response, and they got battle John Lejeune, who was commanding general at Belleau Wood. So that came in there. And right across the street is one of the most famous Marine Corps statues of all, the Iwo Jima one. Historically, when we look back on epic battles that the Marines have been in, you talk about Belleau Wood in World War I, you talk about Iwo Jima in World War II, and you talk about Changjin or Chosin Reservoir in the Korean War. I'm sure that years to come there'll be other ones, but right now those are the three they talk about. Bottom line, there is statues here representing World War I, representing Iwo Jima. There is a nice memorial up in Washington, the Korean memorial up there, but there is no recognition of the Battle of Changjin Reservoir, which is really where the beginning of the stoppage of the Chinese horde began. If we hadn't held that like we did and beat them up pretty bad, things could have been a lot worse. So we decided that we should have some kind of memorial down here. The Marine Corps, as an institution, is very supportive of us. They have designated a turning point, a rally point for us, and they allowed us to say, to keep, as long as we pay them for it eventually. So which brings up how big a statue do we want, and how are we going to afford to pay for it? Initially, I spoke to the committee, and the Monument Committee is out of Dallas, Texas. Hopefully the good old Dallas money will be there. And I said, let's make sure that the individuals who fought have an opportunity to make a contribution. I mean, I want to say next year, or whenever it's up, to my great-grandchildren now, hey, that's a good granddaddy fought. So we did that, and they got a modest amount of money out of that. Now they are probably in what is called phase 2, where they have to get support from industry and government agencies to do that. And that's not unusual to do that. It will be a large monument. It'll be 8-sided, so that the story can be told about the battles. It lists, for example, the 17 Medal of Honor winners from one battle. It lists them. It lists the participation of the countries that were up there. And it also describes the casualties that we had. And then brief statements about the various battles. There's Tokdong Pass, the ones that saved our skin. If we hadn't had Tokdong, East Hill, and Funchalong, we wouldn't be even talking about this.
What is the total budget for this monument?
That has not been determined. A similar one built down here is $500,000.
When do you expect to complete it?
I'd like to see it. Steve Olmstead would like to see it done in the next 2 years.
Next 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of donation, right? Fundraise?
Yes. The artwork the proposed artwork has already been conceived and approved by the committee. I have folders.
Where are you in terms of fundraising? 50% or?
No.
Not even 50%?
No, 20. We're going to need help. And, you know, the big problem is that when we talk about the base unit people, 84 to 89 or 90, and some of them, unfortunately, live pretty tight to their retirement or their Social Security check. And I don't think there's many of us left in business.
Going back to the battle and your service, do you have any figure in addition to the sergeants that you mentioned, generals or colleagues that you remember or something during the battle and your service?
Oh,
who are those?
We don't have time for the people that I remember, admired, and count as my, idols or leaders. I mean, I'm serious. I'm talking about hundreds of people. But the people that turned me from 19, I think I just turned 20 at the reservoir, to a 20-year-old kid were Corporal Pendis, First Sergeant Zulo, Captain Sitter, Pappy Deloach, he was a staff sergeant. Those guys, I don't want to mention any more because somebody's going to say, what about me? That's, at that time, I said, these guys are pretty damn good. I want to be part of them.
How about Chesty Puller? What was his rank at the time?
Well, he was a colonel.
Uh-huh.
He was a colonel.
Uh-huh.
And he was famous well before the reservoir.
For what? Incheon?
No, mostly he started out down in the Banana Wars in Central America.
Ah.
And he did very well there. In World War II, he had a battalion, and he did very well in World War II, highly decorated. And so we were very pleased to find out that he was going to be our regimental commander. And I can remember the colonel standing on the side of the road, not too far from Funchalong, and his hands jammed in his parka, and he says, "We got him now, lads. We got him now." He was a tough guy.
My foundation, Korean War Veteran Digital Memorial Foundation, which established the website and database of interviews and artifacts. Your interviews will be uploaded there. Created KWVYC Youth Corps. It's an organization of descendants of the Korean War veterans, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, in their age of high school and college, or the just graduate of colleges. We're going to have an annual convention in Washington, D.C. from July 25th to 28th. Do you have grandchildren in that age bracket?
My youngest grandchild is 24, youngest. I have some that are in their 40s.
And is he a student?
He is in, yes, he is University of North Carolina at Wilmington.
Ah.
And now I have another grandson who's over at law school in Washington and Lee in Winchester, Virginia.
Wow.
And then I just talked to another one, my namesake. He's in dental school down in North Carolina.
Do you talk to them about your service and Korean War?
The lawyer is fascinated by it. He pops, and he's always asking me questions. Pops, what about this? What about that? Yeah.
How about two other?
Yeah, they're not shy. They want to know about the war. And of course,
But most of the Korean War veterans that I did interview told me that they didn't talk about the Korean War to their family. Why is that? Why Korean War was unpopular and regarded as forgotten?
I don't know why they would do that. I don't know why they would say that. There's never been any reluctance on my part to talk about it. As a matter of fact, my children, they know many of the people that you and I have been talking about. Peep Sight Bendis was like an uncle to them. So there's never been any reluctance in my family. And I think my grandchildren are very inquisitive.
This year is going to be second convention of this descendant, KWVYC. My foundation cover everything except half of the transportation. What do you think about the Korean War? What is the legacy of the Korean War? Why was it important for America? Why was it important for to you? And what is the legacy? What is the importance of it? Looking back all those years, considering the alliance and so on.
In answering that question in 1951, I would say, stop communism. And we did. I later became quite a student about the spread of communism around the world. And that was the first, all right, that's enough. That was the first time the free world ever really did that. But it said that in 1950. In 65, when I go to Seoul or down to Busan or Pohang, I say this is remarkable that the not rebirth, but the development of this war-torn country that I saw in 1950 and 51 makes you feel pretty good. What a wonderful dynamic, and friendly is a good word, friendly. A wonderful, dynamic, and friendly country it is now. And as I told you when we were driving down here, I had many Christmas card friends that I still write, stay in touch with. I love it.
This is my gift to you. This is my book about how Korea was able to rapidly develop and simultaneously develop our economy and democracy, political system there. And we were able to do this because you secured the foundation of the Korea, your sacrifice and your fight for us. So I want to thank you. And
thank you for the book. I look forward to reading it, to reinforce my thoughts I've had all along.
Anything you want to add to this interview? or any message to our young generation or anything?
I think what you're doing with your conference is very good, because much like that man that stopped me in Grand Central Station 60 years ago, that in Grand Central Station, or whatever it's called now, there are people up there that, Korea? Isn't that where I got the television from or something like that? They don't know anymore about it. So I think it's important that that generation knows how the Republic of Korea went from almost devastation to the fifth strongest economic power in the world. I think that's very important for people to know that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it did, and as you say, it's in here, there was a lot of bloodshed, including American blood, to allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Going to end this interview, Joo-min, the star of the Coterie.
Oh.
Thank you very much again.